toxic Black feminism and media racism. If you follow me on Facebook, you'll note that when I posted the topic of the show, I had the pictures of Boston, or former suspended Boston Celtics coach Ime Udoka, along with pictures of Stephen A. Smith and ESPN host Malika Adams. The reason that I posted their pictures was because the circumstances surrounding his suspension are examples, or is an example, a prime example, of what we have titled toxic Black feminism. We've talked about that particular subject a number of times on the show. We've had Brother Tiasan Johnson on where we've discussed it. We had a show that was titled Black Feminism as a Trojan Horse for White Supremacy. And on that show, we made the suggestion that Black feminism, or Black feminists, provide a cover for the white supremacist system to undermine the Black community under the guise of feminism, to be a tool to attack Black men, undermine Black men, demasculate Black women, Black men, and so on, and undermine, Black masculinity altogether. And we pointed out the fact that there, in the Black community, has never been a need for feminism because Black women were not being oppressed by Black men. That was an issue that white women had with white men based upon their power dynamic. But that power dynamic has never existed in the Black community, and in particular in this country. Since we've done those shows, I've also had the opportunity to engage in some discussions at the invitation of a sister who's co-hosting with me tonight, Sister Jasiri Happy Rod Newt, rather. And she, along with Sister Rhonda Segment Ra, have hosted this series where we've talked about Black male-female relationships, and in particular, engage in a discussion over Black feminism. And currently, Sister Jasiri has invited me to host with her a book discussion called, based upon the book The Man Not by Brother Dr. Tommy J. Curry. So I want to welcome Sister Jasiri to the show. Sister, thank you for being willing to come and co-host with me today.
Good evening, Kusana. It's my pleasure. This is really important to me, and it should be to a lot more women. I would say a lot more sisters. My thing is, women get it. Females don't get that we need to really examine feminism, unpack it, and see how they've masterfully just passed along their racist, eugenic, philosophical ideologies into what you all call the Trojan horse, Black feminism. And it's just so incumbent for us to get that right. Like, we really shouldn't be dating until we get that right. You know, we shouldn't start families yet until we get that right. If we don't get this right, we can't say that we love Black people and look forward to for progression of Black people, the thrivalhood of Black people, because if we don't honor, respect, and protect and defend our Black men as our Black men protect and defend us, then there is no Black family. And to think that we can have Black family dynamic without the Black man is congruent with that plastic organization, Black Lives Matter, where on their mission statement, they exclude Black men. So I appreciate you inviting me to this discussion, and I appreciate you and all the Black masculines who dedicate your life to sharing this work and educating people about this work to exhaustion, you know, because you have to do a certain degree of self-care after doing that kind of work, because a lot of the things that you're covering is highly, highly traumatizing. And so when you're retelling these stories, it, you know, it's like reliving them. And so, so I appreciate you inviting me to the discussion. I'm open to learning, and I appreciate all of you. Love and appreciate all of you so much.
Love you too, sister. And yeah, to your point, I can handle both ends of that because I also do spiritual counseling. So I can handle.
Ashes.
I can help
Yes,
people
indeed.
with trauma.
And see, that comes in good handy, you know, because otherwise it can really it can consume you, you know. And so so yeah, you got the right people here.
Absolutely. And anybody who's listening, particularly if you are male, you can, or you know, or female, you can, from the words that Sister Jasiri shared, can easily discern why I wanted to have her on the show. And secondly, I think that Sister Jasiri represents to brothers a harbinger of hope.
The pressure is on. No. Oh my goodness. But you know, the thing is that you know, I really didn't realize how rare it is for a sister to have this this information, this knowledge. You know, for me, it was something that a friend of mine, because I wasn't always knowledgeable about this. I was under the impression I'm decolonizing, I'm doing my work, yada yada yada, I'm good. And one of my friends from high school, he just kept putting up issues about Black men and boys, and he was like, "Why is this? Why is that? You know, why is this okay for females, but not okay for males? Why, you know, why are we ignoring this?" Da, da, da. And myself included, I was ignoring it until one day he posted something. He posted the Onyx report, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson.
Mm.
And it was an interview with Dr. Tommy J. Curry. And that did something for me. I was like, wow. And it was like it opened up a portal of curiosity. And one of the things I learned in the decolonization process is it's so important not to assume you know everything. And never get to that place where you're like, okay, I'm at the epitome of knowledge, and now, you know, I'm all healed up and everything. You know, that's 400 years of indoctrination, and to heal from that is not an overnight experience. It's a lifetime endeavor, because that's some serious programming. And so so that's when I started listening to the Odds report, and then gradually began to to notice in life where misandry is, notice where I've been misandrous, okay? Notice anti-Black male misandry, and where I've been anti-Black male misandrous. I'll tell you a story. In high school, my emphasis was to performing arts, and I was really good at English, and I took a lot of advanced English classes that I really didn't like. For whatever reason, I didn't know why I didn't like them. I just knew I did not like them because it was, now I know why. It was a lot of, it just seemed like a lot of bourgeoisie Black literature that we were required to read. And I remember I look forward to going to my chemistry class, and I would meet with one of my best friends. That class session for us was an opportunity to talk negatively about Black men and boys. And when I reflect upon that, I'm like, wow, I see it. You know, I see it. Because it was uncalled for. It was unnecessary. And then I began to reflect on the movies that that were put before me, that I consumed, the music that I took in, the conversations that women around me discussed in the beauty shop. And I see, okay, it's a culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's a culture. And so quite naturally, I didn't have a whole lot of positive things to say. And even though, you know, I'm raised by a father who loves me, you know, I have my grandfather, Black man, loves me, you know, uncles, Black uncles love me, you know, cousins love me. But yet the impressions that I received were like movies like How Stella Got Her Groove Back, you know, and it's okay to mess up a man's things and set it on fire because you're unhappy with him doing something like, let's say, cheating or something like that. No, that is not okay. But if you look at a lot of the music videos, and if you listen to a lot of the music and watch the movies, we are given license to be very destructive, to be very violent, and I'm just thankful to be aware of that. I'm thankful to be actively decolonizing that, and I say that only because I want to say that I'm not the magic unicorn that's unaffected by this, and I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination. What I am is open to learning, to growing, to unpacking, and my hope is that by me doing my inner work, other sisters are inspired to do their inner work as well, and just really fall back and look and see how we've been manipulated. How we've been weaponized to exterminate, destroy, and dispose of Black men. Hold on just a moment. I'm sorry. I'm just going to pause for a moment. I need to talk to my children.
And while we're waiting for Sister Jasiri, I want to make the point that Sister Jasiri is the most self-aware woman as it regards to this issue that I know. I think when we were doing our last book session, or the first book session actually, I pointed out how maybe a couple of months ago I posted the interview that a white feminist had with Sister Elaine Brown, who was recounting her experience as chairman of the Black Panther Party. And as that discussion ensued, the feminists invariably tried to turn the discussion into a discussion of misogyny within Black Panther Party, and began that by asking who was doing the cooking. And so Sister Elaine promptly went about putting that like white feminists in check. But I mentioned that because I noted during that discussion that when I posted it, Sister Jasiri was the only Black woman who either liked or put a comment on that post. Everyone else was a male. No Black women other than Sister Jasiri even liked the post. And I know I have almost 5,000 friends on Facebook. I know some Black women other than Sister Jasiri saw that. Okay. So, but that just shows the part of the issue that we're facing here. And this is something that's a concept that I discuss even when I'm talking about spirituality, is having awareness, taking responsibility for one's actions, engaging in introspection. That's why my show is called Journey into Self. It is about our whole life journey is about understanding ourselves. But in order to do that, we have to engage in introspection, look in the mirror, and take responsibility. And unfortunately, in my observation, and even in my own personal interactions, I found that, and this is not, an indictment on Black women, because this is a global issue. Most people in general have a hard time being able to take responsibility. Most people are more comfortable in blaming. But I found that Black women in particular, because they've been so accustomed to being able to and being indoctrinated by their mothers in blaming Black men, that it is very rare that a Black woman will engage in introspection and take responsibility and not point the finger and blame. And so I want to give high honor and kudos to Sister Jasiri because as you just heard her say, she recognized, she did some introspection and noticed the pattern that she was engaging in, and noticed how she had been misandrous. She related to those things, and she took responsibility for it, and then went about the process to initiate change. That's something that we all have to do. And we will never progress as long as we're engaged in finger pointing, because the problem is always lies within ourselves. So I just wanted to lay that out there for groundwork. So what I want to do, is, before we continue discussion, because I put those pictures up because I wanted to deal with this as an example as we move on this discussion. So what's happened is the coach of the Boston Celtics, who had a very successful year last year, with him coming on as a rookie coach, the second Black coach of the Boston Celtics. Of course, the first one was the late Bill Russell. Well, it was announced back on September 22nd that the brother was suspended and is facing a year-long suspension from the Boston Celtics. And I want to read into the record what the statement that the Boston Celtics issued about the suspension. This Boston Celtics news release dated September 22nd, 2022. Boston Celtics suspend head coach Ime Udoka. Boston, that's true. My brother Jamal pointed out that Casey Jones was also coach for the Celtics, and he was black. So thank you for that correction. I hated the Celtics at that time too, so maybe I'll block that out. So it says Boston Celtics suspend head coach Ime Udoka. Boston Celtics announced today that the team suspended head coach Ime Udoka for the 2022-23 season for violations of team policies. Violations of team policies. A decision about his future with the Celtics beyond the season will be made at a later date. The suspension takes place immediately. Okay. Later, well, I'm not going to read this article in the sequence. First, before I'm going to change the sequence. After this was announced, ESPN NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski reported that Ime Udoka is facing a season-long suspension due to his role in a consensual relationship with a female staff member. He's being suspended for his role in a consensual relationship with a female staff member of the Celtics. Okay. Ime Udoka ended up releasing an apology, saying a statement. He's saying, I want to apologize for our fans, players, the Celtics organization, and my family for letting them down. I'm sorry for putting the team in this difficult situation. I accept the team's decision. Out of respect for everyone involved, I will have no further comment. It's further, Shams Charania, also an NBA insider, also reported Celtics coach Ime Udoka had an improper, intimate, and consensual relationship with a female member of the team staff. It has been deemed a violation of the franchise's code of conduct. Let me ask you, Sister Jasiri, when you hear that he was suspended over a consensual relationship, what comes to your mind?
What comes to mind for me is, so I didn't follow this this situation, so I haven't read anything about it, but what comes to mind for me is, I do know from someone that posted something on Facebook that the woman that he had a relationship with is a white woman. And what comes to mind for me is that, okay, let's punish him for engaging with this white woman. That's what comes to mind to me. I mean, and then also, it's the imperialist media's opportunity to frame him as some type of vile, degenerate human being. And he's not vile, he's not degenerate, but what comes to mind is, and what I'm learning in the Man Not, is that's how 19th century ethnologists describe and predetermine Black men to be.
Okay, let's stop there with that. Okay, one point you made was, and I didn't know this one, I knew it was that he was, or she, the person with whom he had the consensual, intimate relationship with, was a, or is a, married to an executive within the Boston Celtics. I did not know that the executive was white. Okay.
Okay.
Or the executive's wife was white.
Okay.
So that brings on, a different dimension, of course.
Ooh.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so we'll go into that part later. But I'm going to prompt you a little bit, Sister Jasiri.
Okay.
I'm going to read this again. Celtics coach Ime Udoka had an improper, intimate, and consensual relationship with a female member of the team staff. He has been suspended. Do you see something missing?
Oh yeah, she hasn't been suspended. Dang. Right. So if it's an improper by way of their bylaws, why isn't she suspended too? So this is a one-way thing, and that's in keeping with that's another feminist trope that a white woman virtue, that they can do no wrong. They came over here with the Bible from Europe to tame and make peaceful the savages.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. So,
yeah.
Intimate consensual relationship. He's the only one being suspended. In the press conference, they asked, well, is anyone else being suspended? No. Okay. So, Brother Jamal, if you would, please play the YouTube video or audio of the first take.
You just sat up there and basically told the world, he's ours, but we ain't going to use him.
And they didn't give parameters of what it would take to reinstate him.
They gave no parameters of what it would take for reinstatement. They didn't specify what punishment they gave him beyond suspending him for the year. Is he getting his salary for this upcoming season? Has it been cut in half? I told he's only getting about 50% of it. Has that been cut in half?
Characterized as a significant financial penalty.
So you've got that going on. And I'm going to say this again. It said in the numerous news reports, it was a consensual relationship that violated organizational policy. So only he is in violation of the company policy. The woman who elected to have a consensual relationship with him is not in violation. He gets to get mentioned and put on Front Street. We don't know who she is. What about the other women within the Celtics organization who have been victimized because wrong assumptions have been made by their involvement? If you knew exactly who it was, that would alleviate the concerns of all the other women who have had their names paraded out into the streets. What about them? You ain't thinking about that. So here we are. We're throwing him out to pasture. And again, Ime Udoka cannot be defended. His actions are his actions. Nobody fights for black coaches more than me. But I am telling you, a firing would have been warranted. Or you keep him. But to keep him, yet suspend him, by the way, not just suspend him, but for the suspension to be indefinite.
It's almost worse like a lame duck status.
That's what you did. You ruined his career for the next few years. He did it. He did his action. But
NBA reporter and host of NBA Today, our friend Malika Andrews. Malika, do you have us?
I've got you, Molly. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. And obviously you had the statement from Udoka that was given to you. What's your reaction now after hearing the press conference?
Well, Molly, thank you. If I could first start with this. Stephen A., with all due respect, this is not about pointing the finger. Stop. what became apparent to me in this press conference is that we do not have all of the information here. And it was frustrating to me that the Celtics declined to elaborate or to give more specifics about what exactly the rule breaking was that led us to this point. So that, I just wanted to get that out of the way first. But to answer your question, Molly, I think what stood out to me, I think what stood out to me is that Brad Stevens, he was upset. That's what stood out to me about what he termed rampant Twitter BS is the word that he used, that women were unfairly dragged into this within the Celtics organization. You could see that Brad Stevens was visibly upset about this. And I also found that to be gross and unnecessary, that folks were bringing in the names and the images of women that is just not a fact, that was purely speculation. And so to me, that is what stood out. But the Celtics as an organization could have done more, and short of doing more ahead of this yesterday, they could have owned that responsibility in this press conference. I understand that there were legal parameters that they had to operate within for everybody involved, and I appreciate the fact that they brought in outside counsel and did a thorough organization, and I think that that is something that was clearly necessary in this situation. But the fact that it was able to go on all day, the fact that we are sitting here debating whether somebody else should have been suspended or not, we are not here, Stephen A., to further blame women. That is not why we are here.
First of all, let me be very clear. I don't appreciate where you're going with that. I'm not blaming anybody but Ime Udoka. He deserves, the fact of the matter is, I've said he deserved to be fired if they were going to fire him. If you're not going to fire him, then don't fire him. My issue is all of this being publicized. The point that I'm trying to make is just like you're not mentioning. Excuse me. I listened to you. You're the one telling me to stop on my show. It ain't happening. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I've already said he deserves to be fired, or he deserves to be there and handle it internally and privately. If you're not going to handle it privately, if you're going to publicize it in that fashion, then obviously it provokes everybody wanting to know, okay, well, who are the parties involved? When you have Amina Smith in Boston and other women pointing out the fact that there were women who were wrongly implicated in all of this, it's a disservice to them. I didn't come out with the report about a consensual relationship. I didn't come out with the report ahead of time leaking that they were going to suspend him for the year. They did that. And my point is, considering how pervasive this kind of stuff has existed in professional sports for many years, my whole point is that, excuse me, make sure that you handle it in the same fashion it has always been handled. You could have fired him, and then we could have speculated till the cows come home, but he's gone. But to keep him there, keep him employed, but in the same breath, suspend him for a year, then also that year is indefinite. That is the issue that I have. Nobody's trying to protect Ime Udoka, and certainly nobody is trying to protect, is to excoriate the women involved or anything like that. I'm talking about how things of this matter are usually handled from an HR perspective, from an organizational perspective. That is not consistent with what we have seen throughout the years. That is the only point that I was trying to make. I'm not trying to attack anybody. And if anybody deserves to be attacked, it's Ime Udoka for putting himself in this position. I've made that very clear. I'm just talking about you got owners and everybody else. They know the kind of stuff that's going on. You didn't say anything about anybody else. I'm not talking about you.
Okay, so that was Stephen A. Smith on his show, First Take, which comes on in the morning. And he was joined by NBA Today host Malika Adams, a black woman. Sister Jasiri, what were your observations about how Malika Adams framed that situation?
Well, she just straight out said, this isn't about bringing women into this and indicting women and blah 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 women. And it's like, wait a minute, you know, the organization made this private situation public. They're not, as Stephen A. Smith said, they're not treating it the way they've treated previous engagements. And so, quite naturally, the public is going to be curious about who the parties are involved. This whole notion that women are off limits and, punishment is being dished out. Well, everyone's always clamoring for so-called equality. Okay, well, here's your so-called moment.
Indeed. So she, in my opinion, she framed it in such a way to make it appear that Ime Udoka was a sexual predator.
Mm.
Right? Because
Yeah.
she said,
Yeah.
this isn't about the women.
And it's like, why is it not?
She said, well, this isn't about the women, and we're not going to point any fingers at the women. Okay. What was the key word? Consensual relationship.
Consensual, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So consent involves two people, which communicates that they both agreed to be in this relationship. This was not sexual abuse.
No.
This
No.
is a consensual relationship. But the way she framed it made it appear as though he was engaged in some type of sexual attack.
Right.
Or unwanted sexual advance, sexual harassment, which was clearly not the case.
None of that. Which is very violent. It's very violent of her to frame it that way. And to be honest with you, when women do that, that's, what I've learned is that's a form of sexual harassment. But because the public is not accustomed to thinking of men, let alone Black men, as human beings who can be abused sexually and violated sexually, the public isn't accustomed to that language.
Indeed. And see, and take note of the fact that if this is on national media, who did the media employ to redirect the narrative? Did they employ white women?
No. They employed the Trojan horse.
Exactly.
The Trojan horse, and the Trojan horse is going to not self-reflect and self-examine and focus on their role in this misandry. What the Trojan horse does is collect on that meritorious manumission, the acts of treason.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Brother Jamal just wrote, they are treating the white woman like she's a rape victim, even though the relationship was announced to be consensual. What the Celtics are really doing is an attempt to protect the integrity of the white VP executive. Okay, and
Yes.
further information that I gleaned as I looked into the circumstances of this situation, it appears that the white executive whose wife that Ime Udoka engaged in a consensual relationship with, that he found out from hearing the audio of his security camera, which apparently was picking up their conversation when apparently she was being brought home by Ime Udoka and possibly his assistant. And so the white executive found out. And then, things kind of swirled on from there. It was reported to the Celtics and so on. And I won't speculate who that executive might be. I kind of have an idea. But yeah, so that's how things appear to have unfolded. Brother Jamal, if you would, please play the next audio.
Well, one thing, Zach, that you touched on was just this gross focus on identifying unnecessarily women's names that may or may not be involved. And I think it is it isn't too harsh to say that that was a failure by many people, including folks within our own industry. And Brad Stevens actually addressed that today. I want everyone to take a listen.
We have a lot of talented women in our organization, and I thought yesterday was really hard on them, and I think that, nobody can control Twitter speculation and rampant, but I do think that we as an organization have a responsibility to make sure we're there to support them now, because a lot of people were dragged unfairly into that.
I want to bring in our NBA analyst Kendrick Perkins into this conversation because, Perk, you played for the Celtics organization. What were your thoughts on this message here?
Well, one, to me, I didn't like Brad's comments on this, and let me explain why. Not the fact that he was taking up and protecting the women in the organization, but he said about the speculations and the Twitter BS and things to that nature, and how unfair it was to the women in the organization that is not involved with this particular situation. And I get that, right? But why is it speculations? It's speculations because of the reports that were put out by the actual Boston Celtics. So they didn't do a great job from the jump of actually protecting the women in their organization, because knowing that they were going to sit up here and give out this information and go out here and suspend Ime Udoka and talk about, just give a little details, it's going to have people speculating. And in my eyes, I feel like the Boston Celtics dropped the ball not only in protecting their entire franchise, but in protecting the women as well. They should have made sure that they crossed their T's and dotted their I's before they put this information out. And I get it. Now we're to this point, and now he had to go on here and he had to say this and he had to say that to protect those innocent women. But at the end of the day, man, it just ain't right how they went about it. The word accountability, okay? Accountability doesn't just go to Ime Udoka, okay? Accountability goes to the other people that played a part in that as well. Let me tell you another thing I didn't like about my good friend Wick Grossbeck and Brad Stevens in this press conference when they asked, is anybody else going to be punished? And they said no. And my whole thing is this, right? These are some of the facts that have been out. These are some facts that I know that, this relationship, one of these relationships that was had with Ime Udoka and one of these women, it was consensual, meaning that this woman actually played a part in it too. So my thing is, yes, Ime Udoka was wrong. We get that. His punishment, he deserved that, and whatever else follows, I hate it for him, but he put himself in this position. But why are the other people getting left off the hook?
Well,
That's the problem that I have right now. Everybody got to be held accountable.
I think that we need to circle back to what Shanae said, is that there was an investigation that was conducted by an independent law firm here, and I think that transparency is what will rule the day here. And so without having all of the information, it is unfair and irresponsible of us to go and to speculate on that, because what we have to...
Well, I'm not speculating.
Sure.
I have the information. I'm not speculating.
But what we have to go with here is the fact that an independent law firm came in, did this investigation, and the facts that they were presented, they came to the conclusion that Ime Udoka violated a policy that warranted a 1-year suspension. And I share your frustration with the lack of transparency, while understanding that there is some things that they need to, from a legal perspective, keep private. But knowing all of that, understanding all of that, we have to come to the conclusion that whatever rule, the conduct that was broken on one side, it is not the same on the other side. I thank you for your perspective.
First she calls out Stephen A. Now she completely shuts Perk down. He had the information, according to him. And that
Sister Jasira, your thoughts? You're on mute. Sister Jasira, you still there?
I'm so sorry I had the mute button on. Yeah, one-sided 1-year suspension. Not cool. Not cool. And she's brought in to really drive home this victimization narrative of women. No, it takes two to tango. And if there's a company policy about no tango, then you don't just say, okay, 1-year suspension for one person and not the other person involved. So I noticed that. And then also to get this private investigative law firm involved and publicize all of this is the intention to shape public opinion. Because, you know, this man is not guilty of anything. You know what I'm saying? So what are we... He didn't do anything criminal. This was consensual. So why all the dramatics about this? Okay, the reason for the dramatics is, well, they're going to play into the hurt feelings of that white executive, right? And they're going to play into the hurt feelings of white men in general, one of their worst fears, right? And you got all the women who are going to play into that conditioning of feminism. And the intent is going to be to empty out this man's pockets and destroy his entire career permanently.
Some of us would refer to that as a public lynching.
Exactly. Like they did with our beloved brother, Kobe Bryant.
Check. And who did they employ to carry it out? Recall?
You talking about for Kobe Bryant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. I just know that the woman is Caitlin Faber.
Oprah's friend, Gail.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. They sure did. Yep. They sure did. Brought his friend Lisa on and really caught Lisa off guard with her very tacky, violent questions, criminalizing this man. This was a consensual engagement, and there was evidence that she planned to extort our brother. There's evidence. Her friends testified about her conduct. And so, and the fact that they were still able to extort money, it goes to show we Black women have no business associating with feminism and the Trojan horse Black feminism.
Indeed, and in that circumstance, again, they employed Black women to impugn Kobe's character. And to Sister Leslie's credit, she did not capitulate with her plans.
No, she didn't. She stood strong. She stood strong by her beloved brother as she was supposed to.
Indeed. And so I was proud of Sister Lisa Leslie not allowing herself to be used as a pawn. But to go back to the discussion on NBA Today with Malika and her conversation or interaction with Kendrick Perkins, is you note that at the end of the conversation, when she interrupted him and tried to say that, well, you know, we don't know all the information. When she said that, now mind you, and you may not know this, Kendrick Perkins played for the Boston Celtics and continues to maintain relationships with the Celtics organization. So when she said, we don't have all the information, he responded by saying, I have the information.
Right.
He says, I have the information. And she cut him off. She wasn't interested in hearing the information.
No, she wasn't.
Because she was already employed to carry out the lynching. So the facts were not relevant to her.
No. And she sounded the way racist white women sound.
Indeed.
In blackface. She was cold. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't coming to talk, to come to an understanding. No, that was not she had a very pointed objective. And that was to facilitate lynching and collect on that. Collect her cornbread crumbs, her buttermilk biscuit crumbs on that.
Not at all interested in the truth. Not interested in any other information that was contrary to her objective. She had decided that he was guilty of sexual harassment, and any information that was contrary to that, she was not interested in. Despite the fact that it was announced that he was being suspended for engaging in an intimate consensual relationship. And he was right, Kendrick was.
Yes.
Pointing out that he had a problem with the fact that, given that that was the case, that he was the only one being subjected to discipline. Because he's not the only one who violated the team policy.
Right. Yeah. He did the right thing. He kept it 100.
He kept it 100, but since this time it was her show, she was able to cut him off.
She had her own trial and jury session.
Right. But she didn't vet this witness.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No. She didn't. She didn't. And this really underscores the importance for us sisters to get it right. To stop playing these games like we're in sisterhood with white women. No, we're in treasonhood with them, but not a sisterhood, you know. And really don't even attempt to attract a black man. And I'm going to say this to all sisters: do not bother putting on your lip gloss, your stilettos, or whatever. Don't invite him to coffee or anything if you're not willing to do this decolonization work, decolonizing feminism and its dusty Trojan horse black feminism. It's not about if you'll be treasonous, it's when you'll be treasonous. It's not about if you're going to be a liability, it's when you're going to be a liability.
Indeed. I saw earlier today on Interlight Radio that there was a program where the topic was that black men are no longer interested in getting married. And I regret to have missed the opportunity to participate on that particular program, because I certainly have some insights to share and perspectives to share on that one. But I think that really goes to the point that Sister Jasiri was making, was that, you know, men have finally peaked the game, if you will, and have begun to question the logic of pursuing a relationship under these current circumstances with the, I would say, brainwashed, if you will, mentality that many of our sisters have succumbed to where they've become willing accomplices in the destabilization of our community by undermining our relationships. Jamal, and I'll get your thoughts on that. Let me read this comment that Brother Jamal posted real quick, and I'll ask you for your comments. This was a series. So,
Okay.
Brother Jamal said, for what it's worth, Malika Andrews is half white, has a Jewish father, and is married to a white man. I was aware of that. She's serving as a buffer class to the white supremacist agenda. She was doing her job.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. She was definitely doing her job. You know, and, you know, a lot of the HBCUs were founded by the enslavers after they raped African women in the field and in the big house. And the children of lighter skin, and they realized, they decided we need a special education for them, because they realized that they can dabble in both worlds and they can manipulate, they can train their children to be spies, to be disruptive, and the purpose is to make sure that there wouldn't be any uprisings and any disruption to the continuance of the colonization and domination process and exploitation process. And so I agree with Brother Jamal. Yeah, she did exactly what she has been conditioned and historically conditioned to do.
And it's interesting that the term that you chose was spy, because as we know, feminism was started by a CIA operative, Gloria Steinem. And the practice of using someone to infiltrate and undermine a group is a counterintelligence action. Okay. And so these women are serving as counterintelligence agents used to undermine the Black community, whether knowingly or unknowingly, and they're being well compensated to do so, which is their reward.
Meritorious manumission,
Okay.
which further underscores the importance for us doing, as women, as sisters, doing this decolonization work so we can recognize and decode this behavior and exactly what's going on, and teach our progeny accordingly and our families. And it also empowers us to check it when we see it in all areas of people activity that we engage in. A lot of people think this is just a game, and they just think, oh, Black masculines are whining and are whining. No, this is real. This is very, very real. This is, this, because this is treated like it's not important. You got females who are raising their boys as if they are their boyfriends and husbands. You got men who don't have, you have males who don't necessarily have the language, the nomenclature, to really call out the females in their family who have been abusive to them, have raped them,
Speak on that. Now, I want to just follow what you said right there. And, right before we went on air, an article came to my attention on Tyler Perry. And that article pointed out that Tyler Perry was on the show hosted by former Fox News anchor Chris Matthews. And Chris Matthews took Tyler Perry to task over the type of movies that he produced and pointed out how Tyler Perry had come under criticism in the Black community, and in particular by Spike Lee, for producing coon buffoonery. And in that article, Tyler Perry attempted to try to defend himself, saying that he was just expressing what he observed growing up, and pointed out that he was raised by Black women.
There you have it.
Right, check.
Right? There you have it right there. And it's interesting because a lot of sisters say they want confident, strong men, Black men who are leaders. And then in the same breath, don't want black men talking,
Mm-hmm.
don't want black men critiquing a philosophy that has been founded by a CIA agent. And it's like, ladies, what do you see the cognitive dissonance here?
Mm-hmm.
What are you really asking for? Do you know what you're asking for? Are you aware of what you are asking for?
And do you think that the black boys who grew up in households that were headed by black women on the whole, do you think that they were hearing positive things about black men or negative?
You know about black women who are raising black boys?
Mm-hmm.
No. I am getting the impression that most sisters don't know anything about anti-black male misandry, or are stubborn and don't want to give up that proxy power.
You know, what's interesting is that I was talking to my sister, and my sister has a son who became gay. Okay. And I draw that distinction clearly. Became gay. He was not that way always. When he was a young boy, he was around me, and I know that he was attracted to women. Okay. Now, I also know that his father wasn't around, and I ended up having a son, and I wasn't able to spend as much time with him. So my nephew ended up growing up primarily around my sister and my mom, both of whom were continuously engaged in anti-black male dialogue.
Mm.
You know, which we, you know, if you're not familiar with the term misandry, that's basically what that is.
Right.
Okay. They were constantly saying negative things about black men. My mother, about my father, my sister, about his father. Men are dogs, men are this and that. Always something negative. Okay. And it got to the point where he like looks around. He's like, well, hey, wait a minute. I'm a black man. They're talking about me. I don't want to be associated with that.
Mm.
So he disavows manhood.
Mm. 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 Mm.
Now, when I first pointed that out to my sister, of course, she wanted to defend herself and deny that. But she finally took a step back and looked at it. And she had to give acknowledgement to it. Now, you know, I grew up, you know, hearing my mother say the same thing. But the distinction between him and me was that I, as a child, when my parents got divorced, and we ended up out here. And mind you, I came to learn recently that when my parents split up, my mother kidnapped us and took us out here without his knowledge.
Wow.
But when my father finally got in contact with us, he appointed me as the man of the house. And he told my mother and my sister that they had to listen to me. So I became a man at a very early age. So since I was the authority in the house, I wasn't listening to her.
Right. So if you want to take the authority out of your life.
Right. So, I wasn't hearing all of the negative dialogue or the negative comments. I didn't assimilate that, because since I had been appointed the man of the house, I understood that I was the one who was supposed to be the primary influence.
Ashe.
I had to assert manhood. So I did that. That wasn't the case for my nephew.
That's a pivotal example of your influences, of your knowledge of self, and it just shows the importance of when we have a deep sense of self, a deep knowledge of self, and we're decolonizing, we can make corrective act, we can influence corrective action in our families. But we cannot skip that most important part, decolonizing. And see, that's another thing in our African families we have a problem with taking seriously, is decolonization in all the many degrees of it.
And if for those who might not really be able to decipher what you mean by that, please kind of explain, what you mean by decolonizing.
Okay. So what we're talking about, what I mean by decolonization, I mean basically our ideas aren't our original ideas. And one of the great philosophers, psychologists, he's an ancestor, Dr. Amos Wilson, he always encourages us to ask why. Where did that come from? Where did that idea come from? Trace it back. Is this something that represents and reflects the best of African culture, or does it lead back to some pasty white man, a white woman, or a black person who hates themselves? Or black, yeah. So one of the most influential people for decolonization is Dr. Amos Wilson, and his speeches, his book on the falsification of African consciousness, Eurocentric history, psychiatry, and the politics of white supremacy. Another book that's very helpful in the decolonization process is Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's book, The ISIS Papers. What's nice about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing is she is one of few, if not the only, and let me know if I'm wrong on this, psychiatrist who had the audacity, who has had the audacity to center, to examine white culture, put them under the microscope, and psychoanalyze them, their behaviors, their actions. And when you listen to her speak and read her book, you can see the symbolism within the dominant society, Western civilization or uncivilization's culture. And you can see why certain decisions are made to help white men regain their equilibrium, because they can't produce Black children without being paired with a Black person. And they really hate that the Black man is the most desired man on the planet. And desired not by force, but by love. And so their great equalizer is the gun, and that's their Black penis. That's how Dr. Frances Cress Welsing described it. So there's a number of books and videos to watch that supports us in getting to know, to go decoding why we can tend to behave in self-destructive ways as a community. And once we're able to see what we couldn't see before, then we're empowered to take corrective action. So I hope that helps somebody.
Indeed, and Sister Frances Cress Welsing was a disciple of Brother Dr. Neely Fuller, who introduced the
compensatory
system of supremacy. So he went about to the code of white supremacy, and then Sister Frances took the baton from him, went further into the decoding process. And so there are a number of things that have gone into shaping the psyche of Black people in this country. Not even only in this country, but worldwide. We have had our history distorted. We have had religion manipulated and used as a tool. Books rewritten to use as a tool to indoctrinate us into subservience, into the false illusion of inferiority. We've had the educational system used as a tool, a weapon for our destruction. The government systems, the welfare system, the social service system, all these, the media, all these have been tools that have been and continue to be used to shape our psyche. It looks like you have your 770 area code. A caller, do you have a question or comment?
Oh, yeah, this is Ian. How are you doing?
Excellent, Brother Ian.
Good to hear you guys.
Good to hear you too, brother. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my thought, because you guys went into the colonization aspect. And I think because typically we always focus on colonization as a white male envy of Black men. And we don't involve
Could you turn
the
speakers
psyche.
down, brother?
Turn it up?
Just turn your speakers down a little bit.
Down?
Yeah.
Okay, how is it now?
I think that's better. All right, go ahead, brother.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially the focus has been on the dynamic between Black male and white male, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the part that we're missing is the dynamic of the feminine and the female in this aspect. We can go to Daughters of the Trade. We can go to Daughters in the Trade talks about how when the white men came in, it wasn't about envying black people. It was about they were living in a certain economic condition, and they wanted to elevate their economic condition. What happened in Daughters of the Trade, which it lays out, is that black women were complicit in helping the white man to gain economic supremacy. So in that case, the black woman literally on her own recognizance decided to marry into the aristocracy of the European. But there was a trade-off, because he then was able to marry into the aristocracy of the African nations. And I'm saying this to say, because when you go back to Jomo Kenyatta's book called Facing Mount Kenya, in Facing Mount Kenya, when they were under colonization by the British, he first said, in order for them to remove the yokes of colonization, Jomo Kenyatta said that they had to first get rid of the matriarchy, because typically what happens is that the matriarchy, based on women being naturally hypergamous, they will always have a tendency to give some kind of deference to the power structure, be that white, black, or whoever else. So essentially, he said, in order for them to overcome colonization, they first had to overcome the matriarchy that was in a lot of ways complicit and kind of satisfied with the status quo of being in that colonized state. As long as she could retain her womanly status, that the necessary impetus for freedom does not necessarily exist within the female, right? So essentially, Jomo Kenyatta, they had to throw off the yokes of the matriarchy, right, in their country in Kenya. Then he said they were able to regain and rekindle the fire of black manhood, right, to the point to where they were able to create the Mau Mau. The Mau Mau, one of the greatest, one of the historic black fighting forces, what was instrumental in fighting off the British and overcoming colonization. So essentially, when we're talking about decolonization, unfortunately, a lot of times when we're talking about it from a feminine perspective, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we're leaving out the major perspective is that unless we encourage manhood, which what happens is that it becomes kind of a trick, a psychological trick, because they say, oh, if we encourage black manhood, you're going to want to be like the white man, the whole black macho type of thing, where black men are said to want to be like white men, right? And again, there's this whole conversation and dynamic centering around, white males being jealous of black men and black men wanting to be white men, but essentially, human beings are more complex. Because all props to the sister who wrote the book, the ISIS Papers, right? But that is not it. That's not all of what it is. There is more complexity.
Let me jump in here, brother Yan. I think when we talk about that matriarchy, okay, understand that the period that you're talking about with Jomo Kenyatta is during the post-colonial era. Okay. And so the matriarchy, as it would have been in Africa before being influenced by Europeans, is not what we understood matriarchy to be. Okay. In African society, going back to Kemet, there had always been ma'at, which is balance between the masculine and the feminine. That certainly was not what existed during the time of Brother Jomo Kenyatta. Okay, and even he was educated from a white supremacist perspective. His education was Eurocentric, as was the case for all of the continent, who were educated because they were colonized and educated by the missionaries. If you read the book of Water and the Spirit by Brother Malidoma Somé, he recounts being kidnapped from his village and basically brainwashed into the white system, and was basically had his culture be demonized. Okay, and so we can't. And Sister, as I pointed out, Sister Frances Cress Welsing's book was an extension of Brother Neely Fuller's book. Okay, and so understanding that the Europeans are have their own, and I would throw into the record getting the book The Iceman Inheritance by Michael Bradley to get, and this is written by a white man, so for those who need a good white source, there you have it, where he's basically explaining the book is entitled The Iceman Inheritance, the prehistoric sources of Western man's racism, sexism, and aggression. So, written by a white man, again, for those who need a good white source. And so, when we're, breaking down this whole, feminism thing, we can't look at it from, going back to during the colonial or even post-colonial times. That all is a construct of the white man's misunderstanding, being able to understand my balance, not being able to have understand being in harmony with anything, women, nature, or anything else. So everything coming from their perspective is distorted and backwards. And so they certainly have never had harmony with their women, when that has certainly been a tenet of our civilization. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Brother Jamal, how much time we have, brother? I know we kind of ran a little late. Okay, 10 more minutes. You have any other thoughts, Brother Ian?
Yeah, there are different periods, and in fact, what was essential though is that the hypergamous nature of a woman coming in, because essentially we can go back to the stories, a lot of stories, of particularly where the matriarchy became out of balance based on the needs of the society. So the balance in itself was not always based on kind of a standard, but kind of in a sense of what the needs of the society was. Because if the needs of the society reflected more of a masculine air to it, if that society, post or pre-colonialism, if it remained in a matriarchal state, it would die, right? Because you need more of the masculine aspects.
Right.
And a lot of times,
that would basically be taking us out of balance, right? So and that's basically what's happening right now. Okay,
mm-hmm.
is the push towards feminism is actually moving things more out of balance, because the feminism that is being put forth is not feminine. It's not feminine. You're basically masculizing women, right? You're making females who are basically emulating men who just basically contributes to the imbalance. Okay, and and then certain, I mean, we've gone in history, we've gone, on both sides of the spectrum. There's been periods where, there was an over dominance of the matriarchy, right? And so that's not balanced. So that's not going to work. Now we're in a phase where it's predominantly patriarchal, and that's not going to work. And so we don't want to get into like battling over which one is right. Neither one of them are. We need to get back to where we're in balance, and that's why I asked the sister, Jasiri, to join us on the show, because I want to foster that balance and encourage the balance, and to be able to demonstrate that it can be. We can have balance. Jasiri, your thoughts?
Ashe, I agree, and brother Ian, I really appreciate you sharing that information. Daughters of the Trade, I didn't know about that, and as Brother Sarah said, we definitely want to restore balance of the divine masculine and feminine, ma'at, and no, I don't want to see this from a feminine perspective. I want to see this from all the angles that I need to see it at, so that I can recognize it in its contemporary manifestation and disrupt it unapologetically. So I appreciate you sharing that information, and thank you.
I mean, basically.
Yeah, because
Wait, bro. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, because I wanted to because we have to be well-rounded. So when I'm talking about balance, I'm not talking about a battle. What I'm saying is based on the needs of the society. So anytime, because see, just because you have 90% that's on this side of the scale and 10% on the other side, that doesn't mean it's imbalanced. Depending on the circumstance, you might need a preponderance of one compared to the other based on the environment, the circumstance, the time, based on the overall needs, based on the overall consciousness of the people, right, at that time. So I'm not equivocating balance as some kind of standard one way or the other, but what I'm saying is in certain common sense times, pushing for femininity in a case where you're being colonized, where you're actually needing more of a fighting masculine energy, right? What you're doing, you're essentially shooting yourself in the foot, because I don't necessarily think that because again, the focus on the white man, because we have to understand when we read the book, We Were Her Property, over 40% of the slaves were owned by white women, right? When the Confederates went down, when they lost the war, it was the daughters of the Confederacy. They came in, and basically rebuilt the Confederate nation. They saw their man down, and they say, okay, we need to come to his aid, right? So I'm looking at it, when we're talking about Osiris, he was put back together, right? Because it was understood that the male energy had to be reborn, and part of the power of the feminine for me is rebuilding the man and maintaining the man, right? And so in a matriarchal society, I don't think a matriarchal society means that women ruling necessarily. Pre-colonial times, but I do understand that based on the direction and needs of society, it will look more matriarchal or more patriarchal based on what the needs are. And what we need now, we need male leadership to challenge, right, what the situation is that we've been in. And I think what I'm saying is, when you go to Daughters of the Trade,
well,
you understand.
We only have 2 minutes, brother. But I get your point, and I agree.
Okay, right.
I get your point, and I agree with you on that point, because because of how we've been indoctrinated since we've been here, the black community in particular has been out of balance, because the power within the community has been given and tilted towards the black women. That's why I've said there has never been a need for black feminism, because women have had the predominant power in our community. And so objective is to get us back into a state of balance, and there needs to be more of an assertion of malehood. And so the challenge that we have is women allowing that to happen and not fighting for the male position. And that's the circumstances that we find ourselves in now, because, there's so many women who want the it's funny. It's dysfunctional because they want the male position. They want to take the male roles, but then they want a strong man at the same time.
That doesn't work. That doesn't work. That's not that.
Right.
I want to protect her, but then you want to support the criminalization of black masculinity. You don't want to protect her.
Right. And then when you don't want the man to be a man when he's doing that, well, I can open the door for myself.
Okay.
Right. All right. I thought you said.
Sarah, part of, and so where I was going was, part of the demonization of the black male is a hyper focus on the white male, right? Because what I'm saying, when I brought up we were her property, right? There is an equal blame in terms of white supremacy to go on the male and the female. But again, when we're having these discussions, like Cress Wilson, she was mostly talking about the white male, and we never identify how the white female played just as much a part, right? And in some cases, a bigger part than the white male did. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. And but that has been documented as, in our history anywhere, or at least for those of us who read, And so anyway. But
can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, sister.
I want to say that, to our ancestors who do this work, they never claim to be the epitome on the subject matter, at the epoch of the work. They always invite us to stand on their shoulders. And I really see that being done beautifully within the black masculine community. And, I really have to give a shout out to Dr. Tommy J. Curry and Dr. T. Hassan Johnson and Yusara and brothers who really have these discussions about, women's role in this colonization process, So I see the brothers standing on shoulders. I don't see enough of us sisters doing it. That shall change. There are some of us who are more aware and are talking about it. There definitely needs to be a substantial more of us.
I share you on that one.
Yeah.
And and it's an uphill battle for both of us. Because we're going to get attacked. But
oh yeah.
But we hey, that's part of the journey. You know, just have to have the courage to continue.
That's right.
Against the opposition. So,
Right.
and
Hey, can I say one more thing?
no. Well, I just got a message from Brother Jamal saying we have to close out. So,
Okay.
yeah, thanks for calling in, brother. And with that,
Thank you.
thank Sister Jasiri for joining us on the show. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on Journey in the Sun. Hotel.
Hatep.